I want to share a screen with you. Can you see this screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Lloyd has prepared this page, which you can go to at lloyd.org. But anyway, this is what we were, Kathy was referring to, and didn't bother to read her agenda, okay? But anyway, he has this whole page here about how to vote safe and vote by mail. So I want to draw it to your attention. Please go look at it. It has some very simple instructions. And guess what? Down here it says, after reviewing the view, you can apply to vote by mail right here. You can go to your county clerk or you can click on Travis County. And it brings up a, well, I'll just show you what it brings up. Let's see. Okay. There you are. You can print it off, and I have done that. I'll quit sharing here. Come on. And then there's your mailer. And as you can see, I got one for myself right here. So it just looks just like that, just like what you would get, and you just print it off. Mine's on, you know, it is on cardstock, but it doesn't matter. It's just, you know, the matter of sending it in and getting it. Now, is Ace Acevedo here? Did you check in, Ace? Don't hear from him, so maybe he's not here yet. Okay. Dr. Shun, are you here? Well.
Are you referring to me?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Please introduce yourself, because I know I'm spelling your or wrong. If you will introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you're up to.
My name is Jun Xiao. I was invited to this meeting as a candidate for Round Rock ISD school board. So I have two children in the school district and being involved with PTAs from elementary school to middle school to high schools and the various parent associations as well. I also teach a computer science course at IDEA charter school as a volunteer for those disadvantaged kids. And then I also designed and taught a programming curriculum for middle school girls to encourage them to pursue STEM careers, where women are significantly underrepresented. I'm also a president of nonprofit organizations support STEM activities at Northwest Austin Public Schools.
Real quick, Doctor, would you tell us why is it important that we think about voting for somebody on the Board of Trustees?
I think the board need to, if you look at the current Round Rock ISD board trustee, the picture, you will see that it's not diverse in any way, right? So, but I think the part of the problem is you can blame ourselves. I am an Asian American. I work in the STEM field. I'm passionate about public education, but we often extract ourselves from public services. We do not do enough to help public schools. I felt we need doctors, we need scientists, we need engineers involved with the school board, not just bankers, lawyers, and real estate agents. I would like to give back to the community and serve as school board for all families, bring my knowledge, my skill set, and my kind of unique perspective to the board, right? To the table and to be the first Asian American on the Round Rock ISD school board in history.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate that immensely.
Thank you.
I do believe that we don't pay enough attention to some of these elections unless something absolutely grabs our attention, but we tend to ignore them. So I have another candidate here with us today that I'll bet you didn't even know was running for, a board. So David Albert, tell us about yourself and why are you running?
So I agree greatly with the doctor's comments because I'm running. My name is David Albert. I'm a doctor, but not an MD, but a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I teach government at ACC, mostly at the Riverside campus, and Del Valley, of course, is an area that has been in the news a lot, obviously with the Tesla decision, and is an area that's going to be growing an awful lot in the coming years with that. I'm hoping to see ACC build down there. They have land down there to build a workforce center, and that board just needs people like me. I'm an educator. I mean, we need educators on school boards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that should be obvious, but it's actually fairly unusual. So, to have it, people who actually understand education, making,
mm-hmm.
Helping to improve education.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm running in the area is called, I don't know, are you by single member districts up there? We
single member district.
Yeah. So we have 9 single member districts. I'm running in District 2, which is kind of around Montopolis, Riverside, and Old Torf. Okay. Basically, very small districts, but it's a very exciting adventure that I've just started on. My first run for office, and
my first time
actually. I'm gonna have to cut you fellas off because we have so much other things to do.
Okay. Let me just put my link for my webpage. It's just been launched, actually, davidfordelvalley.com, and that's in the chat.
Okay.
So,
and then the doctor has done the same. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we have a lot of candidates to consider and to be supportive of. And we, by the way, we are developing a brand new website, and we're going to have all kinds of interesting items and a merchandise page and just all imaginable content, including a candidates page. So we can explain, have a little blurb about each of the candidates with their name, their logo, and so on and so forth. And we will also allow people to submit information or, comments in our blog. So you can look at it now. It's still in a work in progress, but it's www.NETCoDems.com. And we also have our past meetings on YouTube, which you can go look at. They will be in, I'm getting chats here. They're kind of distracting me. But we will be getting that on our webpage. But right now you can go to YouTube, look for NETCoDems. And the interesting part is the first session that we had for our county judge candidates is available. So you can hear them today a little later, and then you can go back and see what they said in the beginning, and then maybe, base your decision on what they said and have done in the meantime, which, okay, I want to emphasize that during this very short time now until elections, we have several immediate things to take care of. And one, of course, is the county judge race, which we will get to. But in the meantime, I want to encourage you, not only the board of trustees, but we have everything from Joe Biden, Lloyd Doggett, down to our representatives in Congress, including Mike Siegel, Rick Kennedy, and today's special guest speaker. Are you here, Julie?
I'm here. It's so funny, on the screen, you're right next to me, but I guess it's not the same for everybody.
Okay, I am going to ask you to introduce yourself now and tell us a little bit about your campaign.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. My name is Julie Oliver, and I'm the Democratic nominee for the 25th Congressional District here in Texas. As y'all know, Austin was gerrymandered into 6 congressional districts. This used to be one of Lloyd Dockett's districts, District 25. He also represented District 10. Obviously, now he's representing 35. And it is different. I will say this is a different, very different year than 2018 when I ran. In 2018, we moved the needle in this race 12 percentage points, in a race that a lot of people did not think was even movable. We moved it 12 percentage points to single digits. A recent poll about 3 weeks ago, the National Party came in and ran a poll in our race. I think they were testing the pulse of a more conservative district, maybe not a Louis Gohmert conservative district, but a more conservative district. It found us within 2 percentage points of Roger Williams in that margin of error, and Biden is leading Trump by 1. This is a district that Trump won by 15 points 4 years ago. So a lot has changed in these last 4 years. A lot has changed in these last 2 years. And we feel that. We certainly felt that in the primary, there was a tremendous amount of engagement. We outvoted the Republican side of the ticket for the very first time since this district was drawn in 2011. And we did it by a sizable margin. We had the second highest turnout out of any congressional race in Texas. Wendy's race garnered the most turnout. We garnered the second highest turnout. So we feel the difference even over these last 2 years. We are campaigning in a very different way than the primary because we can't knock doors. So we do phone banks every day. We do text messaging campaigns. Probably many of y'all have been contacted by us, and maybe even multiple times. My campaign manager says, if we aren't making people angry with how many times we've contacted them, we're not doing our job. So we have to contact y'all and create that engagement. We don't want any engagement to fall off. We know how important that is. We saw what happened 4 years ago when some people decided to stay out of the race and not vote. So I fully support our top a ticket, Biden and Harris. And for the folks who are like, I don't know if I can get behind that. Well, you know what? We're going to have a Supreme Court justice that we're going to have to definitely put in over the next 4 years, because I'm not sure that Justice Ginsburg can make it another 4. She deserves to be able to retire at some point, honestly. So if nothing more, we know that we have to vote because we need to honor her legacy and put somebody in the Supreme Court who would do that. So what else are we doing in our campaign? Well, we have participated in a lot of the protests and the marches, whether it was Black Lives Matter protest and marches, or marches for Vanessa Guillen, the soldier who was killed at Fort Hood. We've learned, obviously, there's been a lot that's starting to slowly get peeled back and uncovered at Fort Hood with how soldiers are treated there. Fort Hood is actually gerrymandered. Part of it is in District 25, part of it is in District 31. But for a lot of the communities that surround Fort Hood, including parts of Killeen, all of Copperas Cove, all of Gatesville, those are well within District 25. And we want to be a fierce advocate for the men and women in uniform and the veterans who come out of Fort Hood. We also will be doing Lit Drop. So we will not be knocking on doors, but we will be coordinating with other campaigns, especially our down ballot races, and putting literature at people's door. And that includes, we actually have a huge student organizer movement right now. So for the students who are coming back to UT, we have students who will be even doing lit drops at all of the dorms. There are over 6,000 residences on campus and just north of campus that are considered dormitories, residence halls for UT, over 6,000 students who live there. Yeah, and David Albert just wrote, probably 2 justices on SCOTUS. You're right. So at a minimum, we have to make sure that we have some really competent, fair Supreme Court justices. Our campaign is also doing massive voter registration efforts. And we know that the USPS, with everything that is going on right now, we have been trying to get folks registered to vote at scale by mail. So what does that look like? It looks like taking the National Change of Address database, marrying it to the national voter file. So when a Democrat moves into Texas 25, we can send them a voter registration form. And we piloted this in our race in September and October of last year. Out of the thousands of voter registration forms we sent out, 34%, returned their voter registration form. We didn't do any chase work, so we did no calling, nothing. For any of y'all in the mail business, you know that that's a significant return, a 34% return. 57% actually turned out to vote in our primary. We don't have 57% turnout in Texas in primaries. So that was a significant turnout. So it means it works. Targeting Democratic voters actually works. And we even followed it all the way through to see what primary they voted in. And I would say 98% of them voted in a Democratic primary in 2020. So it was really remarkable. We just sent out, I think, another 9,000 of those voter registration forms 2 Mondays ago. You know, who knows what's going to happen. I'm very concerned about mail. I think, as everybody else is on this call, as I think Kathy even alluded to, even before this meeting started, the shenanigans that this administration is doing to ensure that they can disenfranchise voters, and with impunity. There's no recourse. We're not holding anybody in the administration responsible or accountable for this. So I am very concerned about registration efforts by mail. I'm concerned about voting by mail. So yes, we are encouraging anybody who is voting by mail to get them in as soon as you possibly can. And obviously a lot of our campaigns are mail driven, especially when you're in a pandemic and you can't knock doors, you rely on mail. Those mailers that you get that sometimes you look for about 10 seconds before you take it over to the recycle bin. We're seriously reconsidering if we want to do that, how much we want to do. I actually feel I feel very conflicted about overloading the USPS with 8 mailers when I know that people are voting by mail and people need to get their prescription medications by mail. So there is part of me that's like, we might totally alter course, maybe do 1 or 2 mailers and then do everything else by radio and TV. So I am incredibly concerned about that. But I also feel incredibly hopeful, y'all. Something has shifted, massively shifted. And I felt it the day after the primary. I said, we're going to win. I did not feel this way in 2018. In 2018, the feeling was, God, I hope we win. There's a big difference between, God, I hope we win, and, oh my God, we're going to win. We are going to win. And whether it's people contacting our campaign, and they do, I mean, I tell you, I hear easily 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week from somebody who is a former Republican. And they'll typically say, I was a lifelong Republican, I'm an independent now, and I will vote for a Democrat because my party's gone. And they either email us or they send us a message on social media. I even had a couple write me a handwritten letter that said, collectively, we have voted in over 100 years of Republican primaries, and we will not be doing that. And they understood what it meant, that continuing to vote for a Republican administration was harming their grandchildren's lives and honestly what they live on, their Social Security and their healthcare benefits, Medicare. So things are shifting. Things are not looking well. That's why this administration has to do things like tamper with the USPS. If he has any hope of trying to game the Electoral College again, he's going to have to game the system. Even Roger Williams, you sense something is different with him because he actually looks like he's trying to campaign, and he's never done that before. He's ran 4 times and he's never campaigned, so it's fun to see him try. And then he also puts out a lot of myths. I try every time he sends something, either through an email or through his website. I should say his U.S. House account. I try to dispel everything that he puts in there because he is actively saying that Democrats are trying to have government-run healthcare. Nothing could be further from the truth. Even Medicare for All is government-paid healthcare. It's not government-run healthcare. It's not the VA. So I try to do little videos to dispel everything that I can that he puts out there. And I'm going to hit him hard, y'all. We are not going to be nice this year. And I said, I'm going to be truthful, but we're not going to be nice. This is a man who took $1 to $2 million of PPP for his car dealership outside of the district. And he said 0 was the number for federal unemployment benefits that he thinks people should get in our district. 0. He hasn't been helpful to the small businesses who are going out of business. We had a roundtable with 3 business owners recently, all 3 of whom said, we can't plan for our future. We have no idea what a month looks like down the road, 2 months looks like, or let alone a year. So he has failed leadership. He's a Trump enabler, and he really does have to go. So I want to open it up for 1 or 2 questions if y'all have any. I know there are a few comments, so I'll try to look to see if there are any questions in there. But if y'all have questions, feel free to pipe in and ask.
Okay,
Julie, it's just more of a comment, but in addition to the post office, the other institution they're fooling with is the census.
Yeah.
This has, that doesn't really affect the election, but can affect our representation
Oh, absolutely.
for years and years into the future.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, is it anything that Congress can do, like extend the counting dates next year?
There are some things. I actually talked to a constitutional lawyer in Congress. The president this is his sole power to certify the census, but Congress can actually expand the number of House seats, U.S. House seats, and we could do that after the president certifies the census, and that would reopen it for a period of time. And we could right any wrong.
That sounds good. Anybody else have any questions? Well, if we don't have any now, maybe later on, if Julie hangs around, we can catch some more. But I want to show you something. We've done this with, can you see that? Okay.
Oh.
All right.
I see a check.
Yes, and I am going to encourage all of you to please donate to our three main candidates. We are supporting, NETCoDems is supporting Julie, Rick Kennedy, and Mike Siegel, because they impact our area and we need them, all three of them. And I would advise you guys, Julie, Mike, and Rick, to maybe coordinate and work together, your different districts, but your ideas, and maybe you can, channel your efforts.
Absolutely.
And just kind of do everything together. I think it would be a real benefit for everybody. And NETCoDems, we're here. We are here for all three of you and other candidates that we do what we can. Like you said, we can't go out and knock on doors, but we can write postcards, we can make phone calls. And the thing is, we can provide some minor funds, but basically we can encourage other people to maybe donate. And that brings me to another little quick thing I want to talk about. Remember the mask I had earlier? We sell these for $20, okay? And the money goes directly to assist our candidates. We also have, I'm sure you remember these. Can you see them? From our, from our meeting. These are stickers you can buy, $5. It pays for the sticker and gives us a couple of bucks. And then we have these. Everything's mirrored, right? It's backwards. But anyway, Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives. Now these are free to you, but I have to charge you a couple bucks to mail them. So they're like $4. And we'll have, other things on our merchandise page. We'll be putting them on our Act Blue page, little merchandise page. But every dollar you give us goes directly to supporting the candidates in one way or another. So, and I'm just encouraging you to give it to us, you give us to the candidates, but that way you're sure that it actually goes where you want it to go. So, Julie, I'm going to turn you off now because we do have to bring on our county judges. And I also have a couple of guests for Mike and Rick, but if we have time later, we'll let you put in a plug for those guys. But we all know and love them, so we'll work our damnedest for them. So now, if we can bring up, I think all of our candidates are here. There's Diana, and there's Andy, Jeff. Okay, I'm going to start out today with letting each one of them speak for maybe 5 minutes or so. Talk about themselves and what they intend to do, and why they're running for the county judge, and then we'll open up for questions, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions. So Diana, you start us off.
Hi everybody, it's so good to see your faces. Thank you so much to the NETCoDems for all of their wonderful help with our big tent party. I am, of course we have a new party chair, but I am so appreciative of all of your efforts to help make sure we had a very successful fundraiser at the end of July and heading into our coordinated campaign. And that work would not be possible without the great leadership and partnership of NETCoDems. So thank you all each so much for everything you did to help make sure that that was a successful event. As y'all know, I am the immediate past chair of the Travis County Democratic Party. I'm also an executive director for Planned Parenthood Texas Votes, a statewide health advocacy organization that represents 1.1 million Planned Parenthood supporters all the way from, Lubbock to the Rio Grande Valley. I'm running for county judge because when things get tough, I get to work. I hope you all have seen that in action and know that I never shy away from a challenging job. I have more than 10 years of experience, nonprofit executive experience, leading a statewide organization, managing multi-million-dollar budgets, an MBA, and I think y'all got to see a little bit of my administrative and managerial experience and an executive experience at work at the party with focusing in organization, setting priorities, building consensus, and leading, driving results. In addition to that, my background also, I've been very involved in legislative advocacy for, 10, 12, I'm trying to think how long, years. And I started off in criminal justice reform, really, right out of college. I got a job with the City of Austin Municipal Court. That job was as a courtroom clerk, and it was part of an interlocal agreement with Travis County Central Booking Facility. And so my job was working in the magistration courtroom, overseeing, dozens of dockets a day, several dockets a day, hundreds of people who were coming into the criminal justice system. It was there I saw firsthand how unjust our criminal justice system was, and was able to pinpoint some exact points in the process where some of those issues came up. There were things like frequently you would see certain officers who would write probable cause affidavits in a certain way over time. You would see a pattern, and it just was very clear that things in the affidavits didn't make logical sense about how a series of events have occurred or what would initiate a response from the police. And it just, it really sat with me that people were frequently being pulled over and arrested for nothing more than driving while black or walking while brown. In addition to that, there were also a number of issues that I saw with the criminal justice system and the connection to our immigration system, and how undocumented immigrants were being arrested and their families being torn apart because of nonviolent offenses related to expired registration or expired inspection, minor traffic violations, and then having people come into the jail system to get their rights and their charges, and me having to tell them, none of this applies in your situation because you're likely getting deported. And having moms cry to me that they couldn't get deported because they were the only income in their house, their husband was disabled, their kids were waiting for them at school. And I just knew I couldn't be a cog in the wheel of tearing families apart and of being part of a system that was not treating everybody fairly. And so I would ask the judges, why do we have to administer the law this way? Why are these laws on the books? And they said, well, that's just the way the legislature wrote it. And I said, okay, well, where's the legislature? Turns out it was just a couple blocks away. Like many people, I was just a normal person doing my job that just wanted to help people. But I asked everybody I knew, how do you work in the Capitol? And eventually my stepmom knew a lady who worked in the Capitol and was looking to hire somebody, and they brought me on. And through that experience, I got to be the lead aide on a number of criminal justice reform bills that were actually passed. I helped craft them, pass them, and they went into effect and actually improved conditions for those that were currently incarcerated and educational opportunities. I took that experience and just kept going. I wanted to understand all different types of communities, the issues they were facing, and how I could be a help of connecting government and community to create solutions together. I also worked for the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition, Texas Medical Association, and later found my way to Planned Parenthood Texas Votes. It's there that I've been leading on healthcare advocacy for the last decade, again, passing and crafting legislation, taking public policy ideas from start to finish from the community and turning those into law to protect and expand reproductive rights, and through the state budget process as well. And through all of that, what I feel like is a sort of a cornerstone of how I approach the work is coalition building. And I hope that you've seen that over the last couple of weeks of our campaign, and the different types of people and voices we bring to the table, the types of communities we touch, and how we try to connect all of the issues in our community. Healthcare is not separate of criminal justice. Those two things are interconnected in so many different ways, and that's a place where I've had a firsthand opportunity to work. Planned Parenthood for a long time was one of the only providers that would go into jails to provide sexual and health education, access to understanding about birth control and birth control options, HIV testing and prevention education. And one of the number one reasons that a woman may recidivate or person who is formerly incarcerated return to prison is because of something like an unplanned pregnancy, and how that can throw somebody's life into crisis, and the types of behaviors they may move towards in addressing that crisis. So for me, I've been working for a long time to understand what is actually happening in people's lives and how we can use government to improve solutions, and leading with those voices first. It's not just about the policy experts, the policy wonks, the researchers, you know, and all the academics in the back rooms drafting these bills and these ordinances and crafting these budgets, but that they should really be led in first and foremost by the people who are on the ground and experience these issues. So I'm sure that wasn't quite 5 minutes, but also I think y'all have had a lot of opportunities to hear from us already, and I have had many great conversations from you all. So I just want to thank you so much for your thoughtful leadership in this. I know this decision weighs heavy on you all, and I have so much respect and appreciation for this big task that you have taken on. But though there is only 136 people who can cast their ballot in this election, it is probably the 136 people most committed to democracy in our community, and I really appreciate your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. And I want to commend all three candidates for supporting our post office with the mailers and mailers and mailers. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sure the Postal Services does too. Now, if we will hear from Jeff.
Well, good morning. It's good to be here with you this morning. I must say that I'm going to be happy when we get this in our rearview mirror, because you know, when this is all over, we're going to have to remember that we are all that we've got to make change in this community. You know, there are a lot of people that are hurting. There are a lot of people that are having difficulty now. If it's not because of COVID, it can be because of economic issues. It can be because of health services that seem to be rationed in some cases. You know, I have worked for more than 35 years here dealing with difficult issues, dealing with issues where you've got people that are very passionate about issues and they want yes, no answers. And oftentimes the things that we have to solve don't have yes, no answers. We have to make sure that we understand the issues from everybody's perspective, that we do the work of defining what it is we can do, that we find the resources to address the issues, not from a superficial level, but from a sustainable level. You know, when we start talking about issues in criminal justice, we've got to think about more than just assessment. We've got to think about how we get people the detox services that they need. We've got to think about how we get people into sustainable 12 steps programs. We got to think about how we get people trained and extracted from the school to prison pipeline. We've also got to do a much better job about dealing with our housing issues, our temporary housing issues and our long-term housing issues. Slogans don't fix problems. We've got a lot of people that are suffering because they can't afford things. And, you know, I'm not here to win a beauty contest. I could not win a beauty contest. But if we start talking about issues, if we start talking about how we solve problems, for the last 30 years, I've been dealing with real people with real problems, people who get discriminated against at their workplace. You know, I had an instance where one person, an executive supervisor, came to them and said, I want you to take a test in my name. Took the test, passed the test, and when we found out they needed more people to take this test to get a contract, they wanted to take, that executive supervisor wanted to take the test in that person's name. When that person didn't agree to that, they immediately started going to put them on a performance improvement program. I couldn't believe it. Actually did it in writing. I asked for an investigation from the body that supervises the executive person, because we asked for that investigation. Wasn't the young woman, who happened to be Black, who got fired. It was the executive who broke the law and was going to destroy the person's career. This is not something that I've been working on a little while. This is something that I've been working on for 35 years. With every significant civil rights and public safety issue over the last 35 years through my NAACP work I've been involved in. Single member districts cases, voter suppression cases, saving Social Security, access to health, destroying the school to prison pipeline. These are not slogans. These are actual time spent helping people who are often in vulnerable populations find their way to access. You know, I grew up in Mississippi. I grew up in the poorest state in the Union. And I know what poverty looks like. I've seen poverty. When I was a little guy, my grandmother's bathroom was an outhouse. A lot of people have never seen an outhouse and don't understand what it means to have to serve people that are in trauma, that have difficulties, who have been criminalized through truancy. How does that happen? We have to make sure that we continue to work together to fight against, to fight against what's going on in Washington, but also to make sure that we are aligned on the big issues that are happening today in our own community. You know, for me, it's important for you to know that I have served, I've been honored to serve Precinct 1. I've been honored for the last 3.5 years to be involved with you all. And I think that we've done a lot of things together. We have fought to co-locate healthcare facilities. We've fought to make sure that we get access to the roads that we need. We've fought to make sure that we address the needs of our most vulnerable populations during COVID. We've worked, we understand that no one can do anything alone. We've got to sit and work with our local school board members. We worked with our school board members in Pflugerville immediately after we had our stay-home orders, just to make sure that kids were going to be fed their 2 meals that they needed from school every day. But then we found out, well, if you're feeding the kids, how are the parents getting fed? How do we address those vulnerable populations? How do we work in our Title I schools? We talked with the city. We brought our resources to the table. I've been very proud to serve on a commissioner's court that was willing to put its money where its mouth is, to put up $10 million to serve the community, serve vulnerable populations with rent assistance, with food assistance, working with the nonprofit community to work together. Very proud to work with a group that understood that business owners were going to need assistance and put $10 million up to do that. It's important that we recognize that we've got to talk to each other. We've got to work with each other. We should not be trying to tear each other down. We need each other. It's the same thing, we started looking at our RFPs and what we found was, we asked folks who are doing good work to compete against other folks who are doing good work to do work in one particular area, as opposed to figuring out a way to understand that they're all doing good work, but in different zip code areas, and we need them all. We don't just need one of them. How do we make sure that we align people? How do we make sure that we know where our greatest needs are? When Central Health closed down its clinics in the Eastern Crescent after COVID hit, we called them immediately because they didn't talk to the Commissioner's Court who approves their budget. They didn't talk to the 4 communities that were relying on those clinics. They just closed them. So when we found out about it, within 72 hours, we had them on the phone in front of everybody, explaining what the hell was going on and telling them they will stand this up, they will get this done, and if they cannot serve the populations that they get tax dollars to serve for, we'll find somebody who will. When we looked at Pflugerville and we saw a testing center closed down. We did the same thing. We worked with the Austin Public Health Department. We worked with Travis County. We even worked with the governor's office and Pflugerville ISD to make sure that we stood up the next week a testing center in Pflugerville ISD's football facility, the field.
I want to thank you, Jeff. I'm going to have to interrupt.
I was just getting started.
I know, and as my personal commissioner, I know what fantastic things you have done, and I want you to know I absolutely appreciate everything. But you know, you could talk for the next hour, and
I'm Baptist. I admit it.
But I just want you to know that we in Commissioner Precinct 1 appreciate everything that you've done. So we do need to give Andy his opportunity to speak now. And remember, afterwards, we'll have an additional place to talk because you're going to get questions. So Andy, tell us about yourself and why you want to be county chair. I'm sorry, county judge. I'm still on the last election.
All good, all good. Yeah, well, thanks everybody for being here today. Thanks Sandra and Mandy and everybody at NETCO for putting this together and organizing it on this nice, cool, brisk Saturday morning. My name is Andy Brown. I'm running for Travis County Judge because I think it's time for progressive change at Travis County. And I just want to, echo Commissioner Trevillion's sentiment. I've known Jeff for the past 20 years, and he is a excellent person and wonderful person to work with. And I'm really honored to run alongside both him and Deanna, who I've seen the good work she's done at the county party for the past 2 years. So it's all good. And I know that there's a lot of excitement. Turnout, I think, is going to be very high this fall. I know that it's going to take all three of us that are running, as well as everybody on this call, working together to make sure that we elect Julie Oliver and everybody else up and down the Democratic ticket. And I look forward to doing that with everybody on this call. I grew up here in Austin. I'm currently the finance director for Powered by People, which is Beto's voter registration and turnout organization. And I'm an attorney here in Austin. And I think that's important because the last two county judges, Sarah Eckhart and Sam Bisco, have also been attorneys. And they've had an understanding of the law, the codes, the interaction between the city and the county, and most importantly, how to amend those things. I've run boards and commissions, both at the city and the county. I was on the City Ethics Commission, the City Transportation Bond Committee, and then the Sobering Center. I'm the city and the county joint appointee to that board. I was Beto's finance director when he ran for Senate, where we raised over $80 million and broke all records, and worked with a lot of y'all that are on this call today to do that. And we didn't take a dime of PAC money. I also was certified, trained, and worked as an emergency medical technician, where I got a background in emergency management and triage. And in 2008, I served as chair of the Democratic Party here in Travis County for 5 years. But most importantly, I think the most important thing for this job of county judge is that I have taken a progressive policy idea to divert people away from the jail pre-arrest. I've taken that idea with others from start to finish. And I've been able to collaborate with the city, the county, and even the state government to create something that benefits our community, and that's the Sobering Center. So me and Judge Nancy Hohengarten and about 40 other people worked for about 3 years to study all the different sobering centers around the country, visit some of them, see what would work best here in Travis County to divert people away from the jail and give them a better alternative. We went through the long process of building consensus among every member of the city council, and then building consensus among every member of the commissioner's court, and even building consensus with the state health services and a couple of other people who were naysayers at the beginning, but in the end ended up supporting the Sobering Center. And we did it. We got the funding, we got the building, and it's been up and running for over a year. We've already diverted people, again, and by divert, I mean pre-arrest diversion, so they're not even entering the system at all. Over 3,400 people have been diverted away from the criminal justice system because of the Sobering Center. And I know that working together, we can work to implement fundamental progressive change that builds on that success and helps us reform our criminal justice system altogether. You know, it's a problem when the state of Texas does a better job of collecting and reporting and allowing you to search finance reports and campaign donations than Travis County does. The county has just not done enough about it. I raised this issue in 2014, the need for a Travis County Ethics Commission. El Paso County has one, the city of Austin has one, state of Texas has one, and we really need big structural change here. And this is important because we want to make sure that every person is heard at Travis County, not just those giving money to the campaigns of commissioners or judges. And this affects every decision we make. It affects roads, parks, healthcare, criminal justice, everything. Because we want to know that when commissioners take a vote, it's not because they have taken a check. It's about access and opening the doors of government to people. We want the voices heard at the county to reflect the diversity of the county. And the only way that happens is by making an equal playing field. You know, criminal justice reform and healthcare reform really go hand in hand at Travis County. We've got incredible changes because of COVID, but we also have huge opportunities to improve our county's policies through criminal justice reform, diversion, increased housing, and increased access to healthcare. In particular, mental health. I've had several policy meetings with a lot of y'all and other precinct chairs and community experts over the past several months. And the consensus is that the earlier we intervene and provide basic services, the more likely we are to actually help people and keep people out of the jail, out of the emergency room, and other really costly last ditch results. So why don't we invest more in mental health outside of the jail and make sure that the jail is no longer the largest mental health facility in Travis County? And let's not admit defeat and build a women's jail. There are too many other options for diversion and mental health outside of the jail that need our scarce resources and our creativity at this moment before we build more jails. I think this is the perfect time to get fundamental progressive change at Travis County. Criminal justice reform, increased investment in mental health, better healthcare options, and reduced emissions. And I just don't agree with people who say that change is impossible. So we should just keep doing it the same way. You know, they said we couldn't get a sobering center. They said that was a crazy idea, but we did, and we got it, and it's helping. And now together, I think we can finally get fundamental progressive change at Travis County with true criminal justice and healthcare reform. So thank y'all very much for listening, and would love to answer any questions. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Andy. I want to stress that we have 3 of the best candidates, I think, in the county, which makes it incredibly difficult to try to decide. And there's so few of us that are going to make that decision. And I think it's incredibly important that as precinct chairs, talk to your precincts and inform them about what is going on and what impact a county judge can have on them personally, and take their opinions and then formulate your decision from that. It's not just a popularity contest. It shouldn't be based on the color of somebody's skin, their ethnic background, their religion, their sexual preference, nothing, except who is the best person to do the job. So after my little lecture, I'm going to open it up for questions, and I see that Carrie Collier-Brown has a question for us. You want to tell us your question, Carrie? Carrie? Well, I don't know if maybe she's on mute.
On the call. Oh, there she is.
Are you there, Carrie? Okay, at any rate, her question is, and this is for all 3 candidates, so we'll start with Diana again, then go to Jeff, and then go to Andy. And what are your thoughts on building the women's jail in Travis County?
We've got to talk about the women's jail quite a bit. I've committed to not voting to further expand the jail. I think we currently have 3,600 beds in Travis County, and we want to move to a system that has fewer beds, not more. So I'm definitely on board with that and halting the current conversation to really understand the reforms that we're putting in place, because we also have a new county attorney and district attorney who are going to be able to make some substantial change, I think, in how many people we're arresting and how long people are staying in jail. So I'm committed to halting the current conversation and to not further expanding the jail. I think however, though, and Commissioner Trevelyan can certainly speak to this, there's a lot of nuances around the situation. As we move towards decarcerating Travis County and ending mass incarceration in Travis County, we still have a transition period where there are still people who are housed and our current facility is at the end of its useful life. There's also a master facilities plan in place, and there's also another facility that is on that plan, including a new central booking facility, which is also nearing the end of its useful life. So there are a lot of pieces in this conversation, but I think on the front end, the short answer is fewer beds, not more, and we need to halt the current conversation, evaluate where we're moving toward.
Okay, Jeff?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because most of the forums that I come to, folks will say, yes or no, what are you going to do? This is not a yes/no question. When you read the facilities report that was put together for us by architects and end users, what you find is that there are 7 facilities on site that have lived beyond their useful life, meaning they were built to be used for 25 years, and some have been used up to as long as 40 years. What have we learned about healthcare? What have we learned about mental health treatment? What have we learned about clinical usage over the last 40 years? A whole lot. And at the end of the day, nobody's suggesting that we rebuild all of these facilities. What we're talking about is making sure that we build a facility that pulls women out of 4 facilities that have men in them also. Put them in a better structure that allows for a pod system, which is state of the art and has produced the best outcomes around the country where it's been used. To make sure that we have a state of the art healthcare treatment system for women in their area, not having to go over to the men's side. It will be safer for the women. It will be safer for the officers who protect them. It is important for us to take the knowledge that we have and not rebuild every facility, but make sure that we build a state-of-the-art facility that is actually going to allow us to treat people and not warehouse them. The structures that they are housed in now are called warehousing units. It is important to make sure that we don't wait until we get sued in court with multiple court costs to address the type of problem that we can address through common sense. When the state school closed down, most of our mental health issues went right into the street and then right into our jails. We don't have the facilities necessary to do the things that will, from a therapeutic standpoint, that can help them work their way back into the community. It's important that we think about the entire continuum, not just assessment, but the types of services that we provide that lead ultimately also to what the conversation about how we house people who are poor and unemployed when they leave our facilities. But yes, I support the women's jail rebuilding because we don't have adequate, safe facilities for them currently.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. That was enlightening. Andy, your take on this.
Thanks very much. So I just want to be clear. The question is about not doing better things in the current jail to make programming better, to make it safer, to make it anything along those lines. The question is, are we going to build the proposed new women's jail facility for $78 million or not? And my position is that the minute that we are talking about building a new jail, we have failed. And we don't want to be building new jails right now. We want to be doing things that will keep people from going to jail. We are a growing county, and I think it's really appropriate to think through creative solutions that are better for people and help keep them from going to jail or going back to jail. And that should be our focus. If we're truly concerned about the numbers of people in jail, then let's commit to innovative solutions to get people out of jail more quickly. Right now, if someone is unfit to stand trial and needs to get mental health help before they can stand trial, they currently have to wait 2, sometimes 3 months for a place or a bed in a facility to receive that treatment. In Harris County, by comparison, they have additional local psychiatric resources and typically get people out of jail for that same reason within about 15 days. And if you look back when COVID hit, we had about 2,200 people in the county jail before COVID hit. And that number shot down to 1,600 people because everybody from prosecutors to law enforcement to judges to the jail. We're working together to try to get people out of the jail as much as possible. And that needs to be our benchmark. We don't need to go back up to having 2,200, 2,500 or more people in the jail. Right now, the jail is the largest single line item in the county budget. And for me, the county budget is a moral document, and it reflects our priorities as a community. And the fact that the jail is the largest line item expenditure does not reflect my values. I'm guessing it doesn't reflect yours. As your county judge, my number one goal is going to be to shift your tax dollars to the priorities that you want us to invest in: improving our community's health, protecting our environment, and building smart infrastructure instead of building new jails. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Now I'm going to call on Daniel, because I think you had your hand raised first.
Thanks, Sandra. So I do have, I've got a two-part question that I hope that you guys will indulge me with. So I'm a precinct chair, and this election is unique in that 136 precinct chairs will get to select who our nominee is that will appear on the November ballot. And so precinct chairs have to consider, because what we are essentially doing is working on behalf of Travis County Democratic voters to select who our nominee is. Right now, as I look at the candidates, I know that there is one candidate who has been on the ballot for all Travis County Democrats to choose from, and Travis County Democrats have said yes to that candidate. There is another candidate who has been on a Travis County-wide ballot, and Travis County Democrats have said no to that candidate. And so again, we're in a position where we have to decide who our nominee is going to be. And so I'm curious to learn from each of you, when you have thought about this race and understanding the circumstances, what is it that is motivating you, or where is it that you came to believe that Travis County Democrats want you to be the nominee? Specifically, what is it that gives you a clue that you should be the nominee from, for Travis County Democrats, because that's the choice that precinct chairs are going to have to make. And the second part of that question is, with three people in the race, ultimately it will likely come down to a second vote, and there will be a third place candidate. And so I'd like to know from each of the candidates, if you do not make it into that second ballot, who would you endorse to be selected by precinct chairs if you're not one of the two candidates to make it to the second ballot?
Oh, that's an interesting second part. I'm not sure that's a good question, Daniel, but I do like the first one.
That's what my question is, though.
Well, you're asking somebody to endorse another candidate, and that's kind of like not the thing to do during an election. However, we'll give them the decision if they choose to answer that. But the first question I find interesting, and we're going to start again with Diana. Ladies always first.
Oh my gosh. I decided to run for this because I had a lot of community support. Similar to when I made the decision to run for chair. I know that we don't want to consider race, gender, ethnicity in this, and I appreciate that people currently see us all as equal. But the truth is, we say things like Black Lives Matter because different lives have not mattered and different lives have not been represented, and we know that representation matters. And so when I think about what brought me here to this moment today, it is very much the community I represent and the community that asked me to step up to this role because they appreciate the type of leader and the type of representation I bring to the table, in addition to my experience. Again, right, we start from a place of experience, and all three candidates bring that. The question is, what else do they bring to the table? And for me, it is very much my community. It is working class people, people who have lived paycheck to paycheck, people who have experienced homelessness, people who have overcome domestic violence, people who have put themselves through college, waiting tables and bartending, people who come from the Latino community, women of color, women, young people, like I said, working class folks, people who have, wanted to make change happen in their communities, like I know so many of us have, people who have seen real problems and thought, I think I can help, I just don't know how to help. Those are all the people that I represent in this moment. And for me, bringing that community to the table and those voices of firsthand experience, lived experience, people who have struggled in all different types of ways, people who have not have every advantage in the world to get to the moment where we can then all be seen equal. Some of our paths were very, though we all ended up here today, the trials and tribulations that some of us had to take to get here were significantly different than some of the other ones. And I think that says something to the community as a whole, and that community has supported me in this moment. And I hope that you've seen that in the messages that you've received from voters across the county in the previous elections, not only in 2018 or in 2014, but in our recent 2020 primary runoffs, and the types of people that our community is asking us to elect. I think all of that is really important in this moment, and I hope that y'all will consider it, because again, we're starting from a place of where I'm glad we can all be seen equal. We all have advanced degrees, we all bring great public policy experience to the table, we've all taken lots of ideas from start to finish, we all read laws and statutes in our current positions. What else is the next candidate? What else is the candidate and Travis County judge bringing to the table for the community as a whole? The other part of that question, if you do not make it to the second ballot, who would you support? I do really appreciate this question, because I do think it is important that voters prepare for that, right? There's a possibility we get a winner who wins outright on the first ballot. I hope it's me, and I hope I can have your support to do that. In the event that it's not, and our other two candidates make it to runoff, I would wholeheartedly support Commissioner Trevelyan, and I hope that those who support me would consider supporting him on a second ballot if I was not to make it to the second ballot. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Diana. Commissioner Trevelyan.
Please ask the question again, because you know I'm Baptist. I'll just start talking.
Let's see.
It was a long question, John.
You want to make it very brief, Daniel.
I'll shorten the question. Okay, so the root of the question is the two parts. You know, where precinct chairs are in a position to choose who our nominee is to be on the November ballot, and so I'd like to know specifically, you know, where is it that you have found the notion that Democrats in Travis County believe that you should be the nominee on the November ballot. Second part of the question is, if you do not make it to the second ballot, who would you encourage precinct chairs to support?
Okay, so the answer to the first question is, I was surprised to get calls from my colleagues and other elected officials that encouraged me to seek the position. I was surprised to get pastors from my community and other communities to call me and ask me to consider the position. As I worked with some of our community members on COVID and working with vulnerable populations and being out on a fairly regular basis, there were several people that talked to me about considering the race. I concluded, I think that for me, the most important thing is to understand that this is a service-oriented position that requires a certain amount of experience with bridge building, experience with building coalitions, experience and time with being a part of the community that you live in. You know, one of my closest mentors said, you know, when I thought about running for the first time, or actually I was trying to talk myself out of it. And he said, well, what have we been doing for the last 30 years? We've been trying to give people a voice. We've been trying to represent underserved communities. We've been trying to create opportunity. And he said to me, well, how much better would it be to vote on that instead, rather than present to vote? And it made me think of where I come from and who made it possible for me to be here. We have to serve, if we're given opportunity, if we're given access, if we are groomed and mentored, we have to give that back in our community. I was blessed to be raised by teachers. And what they taught me more than anything else is that we live in a community, we work in a community, but we are a part of the community. And what this opportunity is an opportunity to serve in a different place than I've ever had a chance to serve before. So it's just important for me to understand that I've had a lot of experiences growing up poor and not knowing that I was poor, growing up and trying to work in communities. And I think that it is really important that when you have people who have lived experiences, when you have people who have had to struggle through and make things work, you learn things from that you can't learn in a book. What I try to bring to the table is something not that somebody learned in a book, but what I learned watching my grandmother work. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeffrey Trevelyan. That was.
You want to answer the second question, Jeff?
If he didn't answer it, he didn't want to answer it. Okay, so leave it alone, Daniel.
Well,
I wanted to say something here. I grew up wealthy. Okay, I'm going to tell you, a white wealthy person with all kinds of privileges, and I thank my family and God that I had that privilege. Okay. But one of the things I was able to do is to help people that didn't have those privileges. And that's where I started my community service years ago back in Iowa. And people of color were my best friends, and I supported them, and I gave them opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise. Things happened back in 2008. I lost a fortune. I became poor. That was an eye-opening situation for me because suddenly I didn't have the same advantages I had before. And I was put into a position where I had to live in an apartment that, you know, I'm surrounded by Latino people who work 3 and 4 jobs a week just to support their family. They don't have time to go out and vote because they're just busy working, trying to make ends meet. And it was an eye-opening for me, and I understand. I always did appreciate what they had, but I never really understood it like I do now. And I just want to point that out because just because you're a person of color doesn't mean that you are underprivileged. It does mean that you may have to struggle a little harder, but the thing of it is I'm trying to emphasize that color and those kind of things are certainly important to support those people, but it shouldn't be a major decision-making purpose. You know, we got to look at who's going to do the best job for this situation. And that's just because I've been there and done that. And now that I've interrupted everything, and I'm going to give Andy Brown an opportunity to answer that question that Daniel proposed. So Andy, it's your turn.
Thanks. Daniel, I'll take the second part first. I would support either Diana or Commissioner Trevelyan if I don't make it. I think they're both great candidates for this position, and I would be happy with either one of them in there. So I guess the first question was about running countywide. I've actually been elected 3 times countywide. When I was chair of the party for 5 years. The first time was, I guess, 2008 in the primary, and then you know, each of the 2-year terms after that. And I'm really proud of the work that I did at the party being elected those 3 times. Me and I guess Sylvia Camarillo was my first executive director when we had record turnout, had one, I think the biggest coordinated campaign office I've ever seen. Obama's, the excitement about Obama was high, and we had a wonderful cycle. And then Laura Hernandez came on as the executive director after that, and we really reformed the way that the party raises money and started the JBR dinner that we did every 2 years, raised money for the entire cycle, and raised over $2 million in the time that we were there. Raising that additional money allowed us to do some creative things. And in 2010, which was, you know, Obama's first midterms, it was a tough year for Democrats nationwide. I worked with Laura Hernandez, Crystal Viagran, James Norte, some other folks to start the 21 Precinct Project. And that was an effort to refocus the the party's resources. Traditionally, the party had done a lot kind of Southwest Travis County, because that's where competitive races would come up more often in the fall. We wanted to look bigger, and we wanted to start helping win statewide and helping win some of these, like the Third Court of Appeals, the positions that included counties other than Travis County. We wanted to do our part to increase turnout. And so we also wanted to increase the voices of people who have been ignored, frankly, every time during the coordinated campaign. And so Crystal ran the project. It was focusing on 21 precincts in East Austin and East Travis County. And it wasn't rocket science. We hired canvassers who were from East Austin and East Travis County who looked like East Austin and East Travis County, and they canvassed the neighborhoods. They hit the doors 3 times, was very well organized. We made sure that everybody actually was having good conversations at the door. And the results were astounding. We increased straight ticket voting by 54% across those 21 precincts in 2010. And we increased raw turnout by 30-something% as well. And it showed to me that by investing in communities in East Austin and East Travis County, you get results and you get returns and you get increased voices heard by people who had traditionally been ignored. So I'm running for this office because I want to accomplish certain things in the policy of Travis County. I want real criminal justice reform. I want to spend more money on mental health outside of the jail than inside of the jail. I think that the time of building jails and prisons to house our populations should come to an end. And we should instead start focusing more on responses to 911 that are handled by a mental health professional, not a law enforcement officer. And we need the clinics and the staff to support that effort. And that's why I'm against building the women's jail, because I think that is a misguided resource at this time in our history and this time that we don't have unending resources because of COVID. I also want to work to reduce emissions in Travis County. Right now, it's obviously very hot outside and the world is getting warmer. And if we, with Travis County, much to Commissioner Trevillion's credit and others that are there, have committed to the Paris Climate Accords. But to get there, we're going to have to get people out of their cars and to stop driving as much in Travis County. And one thing that I'm looking forward to pursuing is making sure that that Travis County as an organization becomes a leader on people working from home and helping people do that as much as possible and encouraging, UT, the city of Austin, large businesses to follow in the same footsteps and see if we can't have people working for 3 days a week from home. If we are able to do that, that would basically be like building additional roads, creating additional lanes on I-35 and MOPAC, and it will reduce emissions and help save our planet. So I think you've heard a little bit about my experience, why I think I'm a good fit for this position, my history of building coalitions, bringing people together to get things from the Sobering Center to the 21 Precinct Project to raising over $80 million for a person who started out as a member of Congress from El Paso and was relatively unknown. All of those things have involved building coalitions, building bridges, working together, not tearing people down. And that's the same kind of leadership and experience that I want to bring to Travis County. So Daniel, thank you very much for the question. And I'm also very glad that you're feeling better and look forward to talking with you and others about these subjects as we go forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andy. Kimberly Romero has her hand up for a long time. Kim, go ahead.
Hi. Don't worry, my arm isn't sore. So I had a question, and I hate to circle it back to a topic that we already talked about, but I feel like I didn't get the answer that I was looking for. So it's in regards to the women's jail. Andy has stuck by his stance of saying no to the new women's jail. Jeff has stuck by his stance as well. And Diana, I've been following these forums, and on Wednesday night at the University Democrats, she stuck by her stance of not committing to it. And I remember her specifically saying that the correct political answer to get votes was to say that she's not going to commit to it. And then I saw yesterday on Friday that she ended up committing to saying no to it. So I just wanted a little clarification of where you moved from Wednesday night to Friday. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you.
My position has not changed. I've talked to advocates throughout this campaign as well. I will say I am endorsed by Chris Harris. I'm endorsed by Sue McMahon. I'm endorsed by Amanda Woog. You will see all of those endorsements later today. I've endorsed by Kathy Mitchell. I have talked to the people who are on the ground doing this work consistently, not just through this campaign, but for years, because I've been doing this work for a long time. My position is still the same. I think we halt the current conversation around what was planned, because it seems the plan does no longer meet the need. And that I commit to myself not voting to further expand the jail at all. Fewer beds, not more. That position has not changed. I have a lot of nuance around what the path forward then looks like now. If we're halting the conversation and we're committing to not expanding, then what are we doing with the people who are currently in a facility that has reached the end of its useful life? Nobody has answered that question directly for me from the advocacy community, but they're committed to continuing that conversation. I'm committed to continuing that conversation with them. And that is one piece of the puzzle of how we implement real criminal justice reform together. This is not a yes and, this is not an either or situation of no, we're not going to build the jail and we're going to do criminal justice reform. We're going to do everything that needs to be done all at the same time. We're going to implement reforms that significantly reduce our population of people who are incarcerated. And we also need to make a plan for how we're providing humane conditions for those who are still in jail in the transition as we move to decarceration. So short answer, fewer beds, not more. I've committed to conversation. I've committed to not voting for expansion. Long answer, we still need a plan for what we're going to do to provide humane conditions for those who are incarcerated while we move through that transition.
Okay, Kimberly, did you need any further clarification from Andy or Jeff?
No, I mean, their stance has pretty much stayed the same the entire time. Thank you.
But do may we respond though? I think it was a good, valid question, and I think that, well, I've got more to say about it if
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I think that what we're talking about doing is replacing, not expanding. So you're looking at a building that's going to go away and be replaced. You're looking at capacity that's going to go away and be replaced. And it's going to be replaced in a way that better serves the community as a whole. The whole concept of how you provide services and how you prepare a person to be better able to address opportunities after jail, I think is really important. What we have tried to do and what we've pushed justice planning toward is more resources while someone is actually in jail, whether those be mental health resources, whether they be physical health resources, whether they be training resources. We've got to do a better job of making sure that when somebody comes in for whatever reason, that we address their primary needs and we make better opportunities for them on the other side of incarceration. Because oftentimes when somebody is coming off, you're talking about somebody who is unemployed, who doesn't have access, unless they have family, to housing. And this, we have to not only think about what we build on the inside, but how we prepare for someone when they come to the outside. Is there halfway house capacity? How are we addressing the problem that we have on the outside with sober houses, which are virtually unregulated? How do we make sure that people who come out of jail can afford to live in this county? And I think that a lot of the things that we do when someone is in jail can prepare them to be successful. We have paid for 24 people to be trained to get their commercial driver's license. The first 14 that graduated came out with a job, nobody less than $25 an hour. And that is because of an investment that we made, recommended by my office, in them while they were in jail. What we can do while people are in jail is important, and we should do more, not less.
Thank you. Andy, did you want to make any further comments?
I mean, sure. I think we're talking about several different things here. The question and the main issue and something that's actually been voted on at Commissioner's Court is whether to, right now, use our bonding capacity to spend $78 million to build a separate women's facility. And that is what I'm saying, no, I'm opposed to that. very clearly. And the reason that I'm opposed to it is because I think we need to be investing instead in getting people out of jail quicker. Like I said earlier, with figuring out how to get more psychiatric resources available so that people, when they're just sitting in that jail, just waiting, you know, for a accusation of a crime that frankly the sentence would have been much, much less than 2 or 3 months. And they're just sitting there and we're paying for them to sit there instead of paying for mental health care for somebody outside of the jail. Let's figure out how to shorten the time that people are sitting and waiting in the jail. I completely agree with the commissioner. There's a lot of other things that we need to do to improve conditions in the county, reduce recidivism. But most importantly, right now, this moment in history, I think the number one thing that we need to do is stop building jails and start investing more in mental health outside of the jail, healthcare outside of the jail. Let's get a clinic in Del Valle, for example. There's a spot of land that Central Health bought like 8 years ago with the plan, I think, to build a healthcare clinic on it, and it hasn't happened. It's the corner of Sandifer and Gilbert Road. As a result, Del Valle only has 2 sort of part-time trailers for healthcare, neither one of which even have an x-ray machine. I want to work with Central Health, work with the people of Del Valle to make sure that we get a healthcare clinic that is brick and mortar and open 7 days a week right there in Del Valle. And that's just a start for what we need in Del Valle, but it would be a better start than we have currently. So my opinion is let's focus our resources on things that keep people from going to jail rather than spending $78 million of our bonding capacity on this proposed women's jail. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Daniel, you have another question. Do you want to express that for us?
Well, I didn't want to ask all the questions. I'm sure that there are some.
Well, I don't see any other hands up, and we are getting close to, you know, our end time. So if you want to throw it out there, you got 2 minutes.
Well,
that's for you to ask the question and them to answer it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll ask it then, you know, because I think that it's important for us to think about as precinct chairs, you know, because I certainly appreciate big promises, and I certainly appreciate, you know, like Commissioner Jeff has talked about, slogans. You know, I'm in politics. I like slogans. But I really feel like we need to think this through. You know, where are, thanks, Adana, I'll ask the question. Where, you know, so, well, I wrote the question, is anyone going to ask, what are we going to do? So we're talking about the women's jail. So what are we going to do for the women who are currently in the facilities that are dilapidated, that lack the resources right now to provide the mental health that they need, to provide the resources that Jeff has talked about, you know, to send these people out of this experience, setting them up for success. You know, I think that I appreciate the notion that we don't want jails, we don't want people in jail, but what are we really doing to set people up for success when they do encounter that experience?
Okay, Diana.
I feel like we've addressed this question a little bit, and I think Commissioner Trevelyan addressed it a little bit in some of the specific supports that exist. I just think the fundamental difference here in how we approach this problem is that I don't believe it's an either or question. I think it's a yes and question. Yes, we want to move toward more criminal justice reforms that incarcerate fewer people, both pre-arrest and through diversion. And yes, we also need to and have to provide humane conditions for those that are currently incarcerated, make sure that they have mental health supports, make sure that they have educational opportunities, make sure that they have healthcare access, and make sure that we have a holistic system for addressing their needs as they go through reentry process. And I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's we're definitely not going to do this and we're definitely just going to do this. The whole system has to work together. And I hope that that's something y'all have seen through my leadership at the party and in other ways in the community, is that I'm not going to give you the short expedited answer. There's nuance, there's stakeholders, there's thoughtfulness, there's a process for how we develop these solutions together. And I'm the person that's committed to that process of making sure that the right people are at the table. And for me, the right people includes people who have been through our criminal justice system, who have been harmed through our criminal justice system, who have who have been through the system as well, and making sure that they're helping us think through these systems together. So yes, long-term plan, immediate plan, fewer beds, not more. We need to move towards ending mass incarceration in Travis County. But yes, we also still need to provide humane conditions and better care for those who are currently incarcerated.
Okay, Jeff,
Okay.
further comment?
Okay, that's where I think experience comes into play. You can look at what happened when we were trying to set up a public defender's office. It required bringing all those advocacy groups, including grassroots and others. It required talking to the judges. They were worlds apart. And then you talk to the to the lawyers who represent people. It was trying to pull everybody together and develop a set of principles. You know, if you got 25 different ideas that people have, you know, one group has 5 that they're committed to, another group has 5, another group has 5. How do we weave in the things that are critical and important and build a model together that we can go forward with? We did the same thing with our siting ordinance over for the landfill on 290. We brought stakeholders into the room. We brought the community into the room, the neighbors and residents, the business owners, and said, what is going on in your area? Tell us how this is impacting your business. How have you documented what was done? We took that information and we decided to put in place a new siting ordinance. It is pulling people together, listening to points of view, knowing that we aren't going to agree 100%, but building a framework that we can work forward from. Then you have to think about lived experience. One of the reasons that I know about treatment is because I have a brother who has an alcohol addiction. And he was in Judge Bennett's court. And I'm convinced that Judge Bennett's program saved his life because it took him into assessment. His blood pressure was 240 over 1 something, which was stroke territory. It stabilized him. It detoxed him. It introduced him to 12 steps programs. But we saw that after the 12 steps programs, we didn't have any resources invested at all. There was no training. That's why I have a commitment to training people who find themselves in difficult positions because of addictions or whatever. But then if he didn't have a brother who would allow him to stay at his house for free, where would he have lived? If you've got a person that has a difficult relationship with their family, stole from their family, was violent with their family, didn't have a good relationship, where would they live? You come out of jail, you might be detoxed, you might be in the right direction, but how do you overcome what you've experienced? That's one of the reasons why coming from an underserved community is so important, because you have a frame of reference and a point of view. You've seen friends who have their grandmom and the parents and the kids and sometimes the grandbabies living in the same house. They have to support each other. Why do we have to live like that? Because we don't make any money for the work that we do. It is a real important thing to be able to relate to the needs of the most vulnerable populations, because those are the people that we have to serve. I don't know, in this community is wonderful in so many ways, but one of the things that is difficult is you can live in certain parts of town and never come into contact with anybody who is not exactly like you. And it's important to have experiences with a broad variety of people and create a space where they can share their stories with you, and then create a community of problem solvers who can then go to try to address those types of problems. And I think time and time and again, when you ask us what is the point of differentiation, it is lived experiences and having to address problem solving with very few resources, and in a place where the custom is there is not equity, and there's not going to be equity. And if you complain about there not being equity, it's probably going to be worse for you. So it is important to understand why vulnerable communities need to be at the table in the discussion of resource allocation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. I think Keenan, you have a question? Am I correct there? Go ahead.
I had one, but I am happy to let it go because I know people have been talking a long time. Just thank you for running and for all of your answers.
Well, let's hear it. We'll see if it's, worth asking.
Well, I'll make it quick. I mean, I want to address the recidivism because people have talked about how important that is, and I think it is critically important. But what can you do as county judge to make an impact there? Can you put money in the budget for the halfway homes, for jobs that would be more readily accessible for people who have been incarcerated? Can we do more to make resources available to them, like reentry guides and other things? What can be done tangibly is the question to really help reduce recidivism and help people with reentry into society.
Okay, Danny, let's take just a minute, a couple of seconds or whatever, because we do want to, I got another announcement, so go ahead.
Yes, to all of those things, Ken. We currently have some existing supports in place similar to what you mentioned, but we do need to fund more ways through reentry and supporting people as they're making that transition with educational opportunities, job opportunities, and making sure that we have a community that welcomes them as well. I think we've seen good progress on things like Ban the Box, making sure that people actually have access to job opportunities. I think through our economic development work that we do at the county, making sure that those populations are also represented in that work and those types of jobs that are available to them. Having a steady income and having affordable housing and having access to healthcare are some of the things that lead the leading causes of recidivism. And that's something I've been able to work on through my work with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition. The other part of that is also making sure that what I frequently see in government work, and I'm sure it's not a surprise to you all, but it's just not coordinated well, and like information about what's available is not easy to navigate. And so making sure that we have more support for caseworkers who can help people who are re-entering our community through that process to make sure that they're staying on top of whatever their follow-up court appearances are, that they understand what access they have to certain programs and supports, that somebody's making sure that they're navigating, have the support they need in navigating their housing and staying accountable to the reentry process.
Hey, Jeff.
Okay. Kenan, as always, that is a thoughtful and wonderful question. I think that county government can do a lot of things. The first thing that we do is we have asked in places like 78724 and 78725, we have put affordable housing, not just affordable housing, really good housing stock. Because right now, when you have a fair housing assessment from our CDBG group, they tell us that's a low opportunity area. There's no transit, there are no grocery stores, there are no other types of activities for families to participate in. And they told us, you have 56% of the housing in 78724 affordable. But we know within a 3-year period, when the Colony Park plan plays out, that number will go from 54% to 24, from 56% to 24%. And if we would not have planted that affordable housing there, that place will be unaffordable to plant housing for us. So first of all, we take advantage of the properties that we own. We put them in land trusts so that you don't have 5 to 10 years of affordability. You have 99 years of affordability. Or you have affordability in perpetuity because the property is owned by a school district, a city, or a county. The other thing that you do is you put in after school programs. You put in a third meal at schools. You put in paid tutors for kids at schools. You make sure that that school is open for them until 7 o'clock, because 60% of our tax dollars go to public schools. And if I paid for this public school, I need to be able to use it all day. Doesn't need to be closed down at 3. Sometimes that's the only institution in our community. So it's important that we understand that we do put money in those types of projects, because I get principals that call me from Manor and they say, when my kids leave at 3 o'clock in 8th grade, we drop them at home. They walk home and see whose car isn't home so they can break into the house, steal electronics. And if they get caught, now I've got an 8th grader with a felony, and he's much more difficult to help. But in Manor, no libraries, very few community centers, no basketball goals outside. What do we expect the kids to do? It's important that we invest in those types of things. And finally, I'll say, we use our economic development powers to bring in groups like Tesla, who will invest in the poorest part of our community, $2.5 billion, create 5,000 jobs that we will have for over 20 years. More than half of those jobs, semi-skilled jobs, which means you don't need a college diploma to get them. And we try to make sure that they work with our school districts and our local workforce board and ACC to make sure that we've got a direct pipeline for kids who live in those neighborhoods to work in those areas. And it will bring HEB. And it will bring other stores. It will bring development of the community. And then if we have put our land in trust with our school districts, our cities, and our counties, then even though the property values increase in those areas, affordability is maintained because we have maintained what we own and saved it for affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. You're doing a great job as commissioner. Andy, one final statement, and then we got to close, okay?
Okay, sure. Thanks. And thanks, Kenneth, for the question. So one thing I just want to clear up, make sure everybody is on the same page here, is that the county jail is not a state prison. So you're in the county jail because you've been arrested and maybe you're waiting for trial, or you've been sentenced and you're waiting to go to a state prison, or you're waiting to transfer elsewhere. So to your question though, Kenan, the question about recidivism, I can tell you one thing that's not gonna help reduce recidivism, and that's building more jails and putting more into the prison, just industrial complex. That's not gonna help. I do agree that more good programs in our existing jail, more efforts in our existing jail to help people there is a good idea. But for me, the largest priority is investing in the community and investing in healthcare, in housing, and in transportation. So one example is that we need more permanent supportive housing. We need better healthcare. We need better addiction recovery in general. And I think that COVID, something we haven't talked about that much today, it really gives us a chance to look at our society and ourselves and see what has happened in Travis County because of COVID and what that has brought to light about where our resources are lacking. I think one of the most important ways to combat homelessness, recidivism, other issues is to promote jobs, to promote housing, affordable housing. Doing what Alan Graham has done is a creative way. We need to look at housing first. That is a philosophy that I have about how to keep people out of jail. In general, I think the Sobering Center has done some good work in this direction. I'm excited about the possibility of applying the kinds of solutions, the kinds of teamwork that we used to establish the Sobering Center to other models and other solutions in the community. I think that we need more options for people who are addicted to alcohol, people who are addicted to other drugs, people who want to go to recovery, and that's an area that has been hit hard by COVID. Recovery programs in Travis County that used to go through Austin Recovery have been decimated, and that is a big thing that we need to focus on. Again, let's focus on that before building new jails. We need to make sure that people have quick access to methadone, that they don't have to wait 3 weeks to get access to methadone so that they're not using harder drugs. We need to improve our work with harm reduction. And we need supportive housing specifically for people who are fleeing intimate partner violence, because we're never going to solve domestic violence issues until everyone who's being abused has somewhere safe to go. So let's make sure in the big picture that we are doing things that are helping people get their lives together. And I don't think that we can continue to punish the vulnerable at such a great expense to our county and to our community by just building more jails. I don't think that's the answer. But thank you very much for your question. Thank you everyone for all your time. I know we went way over. Sandra and NETCO, thank you so much for focusing on this. I really appreciate your time.
Well, and I want to thank all of our candidates, Diana, Jeff, and Andy. And also thank you so much, Julie. I thought we might have a little bit more time. But I do want you to draw your attention to the chat. We have a link there for our All In for Texas. So grab something to eat real fast or whatever you want to do to entertain yourself and come right back into Zoom for the Texas Parties webinar just following at 1 o'clock. I really wanted to give you a little more time, but this is the way things go. Let me see, I got some messages here. Okay, we all live in Zoom. Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
We no longer have a physical existence. We're just boxes in Zoom.
I know. I just saw an old Star Trek thing from years ago where this entire planet was occupied by brains and little balls, you know, and that's kind of what I feel like nowadays. Is here we are. We have no bodies. We're just a Zoom member.
The Brady Bunch.
Well, with regard to the webinar, go to the link and register real quickly if you want to go, stay in it, and you'll get the link to the Zoom meeting so you can sign in.
Yeah.
So the link that I posted will take you to their sign up place where you can then get the Zoom address.
Okay.
Is it Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares?
Okay, let's see. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And do go to that link and see what the Texas Party has to say for us today. But grab something to eat and entertain yourself because you're going to be listening to a lot of speakers. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.